Hola, bienvenidos. We are heading out to the Amazon in a couple of days. Super excited for that. And so I thought I would drop in on you this beautiful Friday night and talk a little bit about our protocol, which is something that I'm also very excited about. There have been a lot of advances in neuroscience and cognitive science and various other fields that support a lot of intuitions that I've had in regards to the holonomic or fractal nature of the information systems in the mind and lots of other really interesting aspects. So basically, the more conventional therapeutic modalities target specific, what I call ancillary correlates, which is like supporting tributaries to like a main neural hub, right? And so we start by editing these lesser priors, basically, that have less top-down governance over the entire fractal pattern that is the information system in our brain. So gnosis is so effective at transforming people because it goes the main ontological prior, the fundamental belief system, the window through which we view the world and ourselves. And are we really not live? What's going on? Looks like I might be having some problems with the stream. So where were we? Yeah, so you can think of it like if you remove a primary arm from a Mandelbrot set, there will be impact all over the entire network. And the same is true of the fractal system in our brains, right? So a great example of this, and a really important aspect of it to understand, is that in one research trial, lesions, I don't know who volunteered for this, but lesions were applied to a certain segment of the brain that contains certain information, but then that information is still present globally in the rest of the network. So when you attack the neuronal architecture that, how's it going, that contains the information, it's not completely eradicated from the system, right? It's in a degraded form, but it's still there. So when you engage in therapy, when you have as your medium to interface with the brain meaning or information, you can actually eradicate the information from the system globally, right? So that's interesting to me because it suggests that at least in terms of our cognitive processes, meaning is more fundamental than matter. And I suspect that that's true universally, but for our purposes right now, we'll stick to the domain of the brain. So continuing along this, line of thinking, we're all well aware that spiritual experiences and transcendental experiences often cause immediate onset and lasting transformation in individuals, right? But they can be problematic because there are dogmas, there's doctrinal baggage, basically. You become a Catholic and you have the guilt complex of now you have the blood of Christ on your hands and all of this kind of stuff. And not only does it saddle you with a new set of potentially aberrative, network dissonance, it also re-stimulates old patterns that you may have already begun to work on. So in the case of the process of gnosis, we're not trying to inculcate new content into the information system. What we're trying to do is bring it back into homeostasis. And if you guys follow me, you might remember a few weeks ago, I had the idea that we could use electromagnetic waves as a sort of neural therapy if they were based on golden ratio oscillations. Not only are our brainwaves already oscillating in, basically Fibonacci sequences. But the dissonance pattern is not consistent with the blueprint, right? The underlying architecture reflects truth and untruth and aberrative, interference patterns in the system are going to entrain with golden ratio oscillations, and so it's going to restore homeostasis to the system. A couple days ago, I found a article from I think Future magazine that said that they were using ultrasound to holographic ultrasound for this exact therapeutic modality. Of course, I don't have ultrasound machines, and we're not offering that at JungleGnosis. But it supports this intuition that I had that there is a homeostasis, that is our natural state, and that a lot of our incongruency, our the fact that we're so out of phase with those golden ratio oscillations has to do with social engineering, and it also has to do with maladaptive evolutionary hardware or software. Not really sure which to categorize it as, but like the default mode network being too dominant as a top-down administrative component in our nervous system, right? It gives us our sense of self. It mediates between us and the environment so that we don't just merge with the light. And then we also have these priors I've been talking about. Everything in the universe is generated by this recursive process, a self-referencing process of generation, right? This is what happens at the Calabi-Yau level, at the subquantum layer of reality. This is what happens at the level of DNA, at the level of galaxies. It's ubiquitous throughout all of creation. Our brains have, mirror neurons that work like this. And so whatever early installations we have in terms of religion, in terms of ideology, political doctrine, these are our fundamental priors. And what they do basically is determine what sensory inputs are going to get promoted to conscious awareness, which ones are going to be deleted, and even how to render meaning that is associated with signals. And all of this happens before we are conscious of it. So our sovereignty is undermined, our agency is diluted, right? It's not really optimal. It was optimal when we were hunters and gatherers and we needed to be completely task oriented. But as our environment has started to outpace the trajectory of our cognitive evolutionary processes, it's become maladaptive. And then also, there are people up the food chain that have figured out how to use this to exploit people. It's the fundamental mechanism of social engineering, really. And it is also, you could think of it as a reflective process, right? And because it's editing our perception of reality, we do not have a holistic framework. We're not integrating the pattern in its completion. There's dissonance and interference. There are missing pieces in the fractal, And so when we eliminate the dissonant influence of this editing software, we are better able to reflect our true essence and self into the world. And this is basically the basis of manifestation and self-realization, and why, Socrates and all of these great thinkers said, know thyself, right? Because you have to have a clear concept of what you are fundamentally, and also the system that you are relating to. And the way our nervous system is set up, as long as you have this signal gating that is kind of like overbearing, you're not going to be able to have adequate information about either system to align them correctly. So luckily, as it turns out, we have compounds that I'm not going to name specifically, you can read between the lines, that help us to attenuate that signal gating process, right? And then we have esoteric knowledge from especially Hermeticism that teaches us how to see the wiring under the board effectively, so that not only are we integrating the experiences that we have during ceremony, we are able to stabilize this type of consciousness without the complications of being in an altered state all the time, through cognitive training and development. So basically, the core idea is you target the fundamental thing first instead of going after mommy issues and daddy issues, and you saw your dog get hit by a car when you were a kid, or you got bullied, all that kind of stuff. That is part of the process. But first, you go to the core thing, your fundamental beliefs. Now, there is a caveat here, because this does kind of increase the risk of disorientation. When you go too fast and too hard and too strong at the core beliefs, you can destabilize a person. And the solution to that actually is that it is a gradual tiered process with a formalized protocol to ensure that that doesn't happen. And the reality is, this is why we keep our group small, for one thing. You have to customize this process for each individual. This is not like a one-size-fits-all kind of scenario. The level and degree of trauma that you have, the level and degree of religious and political indoctrination also plays a role. The willingness of the individual to actually let go of all of these things also plays a role. And then the responsibility is also largely on the individual to not only participate in the activities that loosen the hold of the default mode network and enhance neuroplasticity and all that, but to follow through with the integration, which in our case, my recommendation for preparation and integration, it's not just about maintaining a certain diet. It's not just about protecting your energetic field from dissonant influences. You also have to commit to intellectual, academic enrichment and practices of mindfulness. And, there's a very structured, and I'd almost say tedious, protocol that follows this stuff if you're really interested in maximizing your investitures, optimizing your investment, and really transforming yourself in the most rapid and safe and lasting manner possible. A lot of that is the ball's in your court. Having said that, though, I've been doing this with the ancestral accoutrements for quite a while now, almost 10 years. I have studied psychoanalytics, neuroscience, cognitive sciences. I have been an initiate in the Hermetic wisdom traditions for 20 years, I guess, almost 15 years, I guess. And I use all of those things, and in whatever arrangement is appropriate for the individual, which varies a lot. And it varies partly upon your goals and your intentions as well. If your goal is just to experience something because you don't have a tremendous amount of baggage and it's just curiosity, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not opposed to that. If your goal is to become a polymath genius adept, then, that is going to require a completely different protocol, but it is within your reach to upgrade all of your systems to that extent. It really is. We have the capacity, the hardware, we have the tools, we know the protocol. I really do think that what I'm in the process of developing is probably the most efficacious system for self-realization that exists. And it's because of the syncretism of it, drawing equally from so many different traditions and disciplines is the recipe, for alchemical transmutation. So if you guys have any questions or comments, let me know in the chat. And we are going to be in the Amazon from next week off and on until December, so you have lots of time. But I would still, if you're planning to come, email me sooner than later and get your spot reserved so that it's not slurped up by some other lucky person. I don't really have a tremendous amount more to say about that, except that I'm really excited about this. Every day I'm learning more about the holonomic brain theory and how it can be leveraged for transformation. You know, this is something that's in the very early stages of development in the fields of neuroscience and psychology. So, we're kind of neck and neck. And I really do think that having the willingness to integrate the practices and the knowledge of ancient esoteric traditions like Hermeticism and Amazonian ancestral practices, it's just a tremendously powerful recipe. Okay, so going once, going twice. Does anyone have questions or subjects that they would like me to weigh in on? I'm kind of keeping it brief tonight because tomorrow I'm doing my tribute to Bob Weir, who is a pretty significant figure in my life, and his songs are pretty hard, especially because you have to sing them and play them. He doesn't Garcia would simplify things when he went to sing because that just makes sense. Weir didn't do that. And if you don't play the parts right, the song falls apart. So I've got to work a lot in order to not make a fool of myself tomorrow. And that's my plan for the rest of the evening. I don't know if I mentioned that we're going to be in Tambopata. We're right on the river. There have been jaguar and ocelot on the property. There are apparently always capybara and caiman down by the river. And what is that thing? The yellow spiny porcupine. There's one living on the property. It's an extremely rare Amazonian critter. Yeah, so super excited about all that. I don't see any questions popping into the chat, so I guess that's where we're at with it. You know what I mean? We have developed quite a efficacious system, and I'm more excited about all of this with each passing day. I'm also really excited to see some of you guys that I've known for years online this season, and I'll be looking forward to it. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for some music.